The Committee on Appropriations and Adjudications will reconvene at this point. We have two departments on this afternoon. I'm going to start with DISID. I know the Vice Speaker wanted to be here for the Commission on Decolonization, so I'll wait until she arrives. So, Mr. Savino, if you please just provide your testimony.
Thank you. Buenas and half a day, Speaker Cruz and members of the Committee on Appropriations and Adjudication. For the record, my name is Benito Ben S. Servino, and I serve as the Director for the Department of Integrated Services for Individuals with Disabilities, DISID for short. I'm submitting this written testimony in response to your request regarding the following questions. What are the core missions of your agency, and how do they serve the taxpayer? As per Public Law 21-46, the Department of Integrated Services for Individuals with Disabilities serves as a single point of entry agency within the government of Guam to coordinate and provide comprehensive community services and vocational rehabilitation services for eligible individuals with disabilities. There are two division units that are established within DISID, which includes the Division of Support Services and the Division of Vocational Rehab. The Division of Support Services is 100% locally funded, and current staffing is composed of 4 full-time classified social workers. DSS strives to fulfill the Public Law 24-26 mandate by providing quality care and advocacy services to all our clients. DSS's core mission is to provide strength-based, client-centered support and individualized service planning to those in need while promoting independence and empowering the dignity of the human person. What specific metric or metrics do you use to determine your core mission and being achieved? The tracking and provision of mandated support services for individuals with disabilities that were seen by DSS includes information referral services and assistance, case management, intake assessment, and the development of individualized services plans, the referrals for respite care and community rehabilitation services in collaboration with the Guam Behavioral Health and Wellness Center, providing property tax credit application assistance in collaboration with the Department of Revenue and Tax and the Real Property Tax Division, providing housing application assistance in collaboration with the Guam Housing and Urban Renewal Authority and the Homeless Coalition, providing public assistance services in collaboration with the Department of Public Health and Social Services, monitoring and providing technical assistance compliance on the accessible parking law, compliance with the Guam Police Department, Department of Public Works, and the Department of Revenue and Taxation, advocacy and technical assistance regarding compliance with the Americans with Disabilities Act, collaboration with the GovGuam ADA coordinators, liaisons, and the Guam Legal Service Corporation Disability Law Center, the provision of assistive technology in collaboration with UOG CEDARS, the Guam System for Assistive Technology, providing transportation application assistance for the paratransit system, and in collaboration again with the Guam Regional Transit Authority and the GRTA Consumer Advisory Council, providing financial assistance in collaboration with Public Health, GSAT, and the Guam Social Security Administration Office, providing outreach and completing the emergency online registry for people with special needs in collaboration with the Guam Fire Department and other NPOs and community disability support groups, the provision of extended services and other support services for individuals seeking support employment services in collaboration with the Division of Voc Rehab and the Guam Department of Labor's American Jobs Center, and the development of outreach and educational training regarding emergency and disaster preparedness strategies targeted for people with disabilities in collaboration with the Governor's Serve Guam Commission, the AmeriCorps program, and the Office of Civil Defense and female agencies. And now I'm moved to the Division of Vocational Rehab, which is a public service that provides vocational rehabilitation and support employment services to eligible individuals with disabilities, and serves as the designated state unit to administer the state plan for vocational rehabilitation, the independent living services, and the independent living older blind grant that we received. DVR's core mission is to enable qualified individuals with disabilities, especially those with significant disabilities, to achieve employment and community independence through quality services. And the way we do it is we provide tracking and provision of mandated vocational rehab services for individuals with disabilities that were seen by their DVR counselor. And it includes services such as eligibility for services determination, the development of the individualized plan for employment, the completion of the individualized plan for employment, the provision of counseling and guidance services, the receipt of physical and mental restoration services, the receipt of training services, employment readiness, employment placement, the interruption of those services, and successful rehabilitation and case closure after the IPE was completed. We also have the case closures after the IPE was initiated, and the case closures before the IPE was initiated. These are tracking systems that we have to report to our federal grantor on a regular basis. A brief overview of our agency's funding level for fiscal year 2019 and how these funds are allocated and expended to meet our agency's core mission. We're asking for funding level for fiscal year 2019, $1,052,841. Of that amount, $601,473 will fund the DISID Director's Office and the Division of Sports Services. An amount of $468,935 will go towards funding personnel costs, of which $360,452 funds the field positions, the DISID Director's Office, and the 4 social workers within the Division of Support Services. There are 2 vacant funded positions totaling $108,483, which will fund the DSS Administrator position in the Division of Support Services at approximately $81,994 in salaries and benefits, and 1 office aide position in the Director's Office at approximately $26,489 in salaries and benefits. The remaining $132,538 will fund the operations in both these offices, which covers contractual services, office rental space, supplies, and telephone and fax. A total of $29,450 is allocated to partially fund the salaries of staff in the DVR Fiscal and Administrative Services Unit, who are primarily funded by the VR federal grant funds that we receive. This amount is to the fund of up to 10% of time worked by that staff when working on non-VR related functions. Funding for this unit will be decreased by approximately $43,810, and that includes their salaries and benefits in fiscal year 2019 by not funding the Accounting Technician 2 position, which is the only position in this office that was 100% funded by the general fund. The remaining $421,918 will be allocated to cover the local match share of 21.3% for the Vocational Rehab Services grant. With this amount, the VR program can receive up to $2,298,884 of federal grant funds from the U.S. Department of Education Rehab Services Administration, and that federal share is 78.7%. The Division of Vocational Rehab currently has a total number of 13 full-time employees, which includes 8 vocational rehab counselors, 1 ASO HR manager, 1 accounting technician, one VR worker, and one DD8, and one secretary. The staffing patterns are not funded by the general fund, are provided for informational purposes. These positions are funded by the VR federal grant, and all the VR staff are funded with 100% carryover federal funds from the grant. The Department of Integrated Services for Individuals with Disabilities acknowledges the economic condition that currently exists on our island and continues to operate within its means without jeopardizing the quality of services that are provided for our clients. Respectfully, Ben S. Servino.
Thank you very much, Mr. Servino. The FY18, in FY18, is DISID tracking to expend all the federal matching funds available?
We try to, again, expend first the local funds, because that's what's required by our federal grant, and then we use up the federal grant money after we expend the local funds. We do get simultaneous grants. Again, because the first grant we get, if we get it for 2018, we can carry it over to 2019. And then in 2019, we still get another grant, and we have to expend that grant within that year. It gets really challenging when you're dealing with federal grants, because if you don't expend it within that year, the federal agency that funds us requires that we re-allot that grant back to their agency so it can go back to other states that could use it. So that's how it's done throughout the nation. And a lot of agencies go through that challenge, not only us.
How much have you been sending back to the federal government annually for the last several years?
For the reallotment, in 2010, there was 710,183. 2011, 134,617. 2012, we didn't send any money back because they wanted to use that money, again, for a special program, so they just took it out of all the states' federal grants. And then in 2013, we, again, accumulated so much of the grants, we had to return back, reallot back. It's not really returning it back, it's reallotting it. They call it reallotment of $2 million. And then 2014, we didn't send in any reallotment funds back. We used it all up. In 2015, we didn't send any money back for reallotment. And in 2016, we sent back $47,284. And 2017, we reallotted $143,018.
Okay, that sounds pretty reasonable. That's not too bad. But as I understand it, you still have some vacancies, a number of vacancies in your VOC rehab.
That's correct.
Is there a reason why you have those vacancies? Do you need some federal funds to be able to fill those positions, or?
One of the challenges we have, especially for the VR administrator, is that it requires a master's degree and a certification in rehabilitation counseling. And there aren't very many people that have those qualifications. So we haven't been able to get the numbers of applicants that we were hoping to get. If we do get one applicant, I'd have to wait until we get more applicants to, again, identify the most qualified candidate. So that's one of the challenges we have.
How long has that been vacant?
Gosh, let's see, since 2013. I've been serving as the deputy director, the administrator for voc rehab, the administrator for social services since 2013. Two of our VR administrators resigned. One of them resigned, and then he passed away, Albert St. Augustine, you probably remember him. The other one was Helena Kubo. She was the administrator for the Division of Sports Services, and she passed away also. Fortunately, she had a stroke in the office on her work desk.
But why can't we find anybody to fill it? I mean, if there's one applicant and that's the only applicant, you can't select that person? You have to wait until there's more than one?
No,
What if there's
I
first
guess
over 5 years, you remain vacant because you only have one applicant a year, even if it's a different applicant every year?
we did hire somebody back in 2013. It was actually an off-island recruit. Somebody applied from off-island, but they didn't last very long. They only lasted for about 4 months, and I assume they got another job offer from another state that offered a higher compensation. So those are some of the challenges. The salary compensation for VR administrators are, again, very competitive. And here in Guam, we don't offer that same type of competitive salary that they offer in the mainland. Like most specialists, psychologists, psychiatrists, physical therapists, they make a significant amount of salary back in the mainland as opposed to here. So there aren't very many incentives. I'm hoping to try to recruit some island folks from off-island, like myself, that wants to come back to Guam and give back to our island and give them that opportunity. So I'm reaching out to the universities out there to see if they can identify and help me identify anybody that meets those qualifications, requirements, and have them apply. Again, the other challenges is, like everybody else, when you go through a recruitment process, sometimes the timetable that's required to interview them, select them, rate them, sometimes can be quite challenging. And you have to identify people within other agencies that are in the same level to be part of the interview team. And it's very difficult to identify other agency reps at that rate that can be part of the interview committee. So trying to identify people, individuals that are at that salary level and rating to be part of the interview committee can be another challenge. But we're not giving up. I'm still reaching out, working with the American Job Center, posting our positions there, and reaching out to the Council of State Administrators and Voc Rehab and our partners in the VR systems to see if there are any individuals that would want to make it an opportunity to come to Guam, especially those that are retiring. They have a lot of knowledge and experience that they could share and help building our capacity here in Guam.
The University of Guam now has a master's program. Have you worked with them to see whether or not any of the recent graduates with a master's would be available to, or is there some way you could groom someone to do that? I mean,
yes, actually, I spoke to President Underwood about that, and I said, President, we really need to start building the curriculums here to include some of the VR-related curriculums, because that's something that's really needed for our agency. We can look at candidates that have master's degree, but a lot of times when I identify somebody that's got a master's degree, for this kind of position, it also requires some supervisory experience. So that makes it another challenge. You have to have so many years of supervisory experience. And candidates that are graduating, oftentimes they lack that experience of having to supervise others. But I will continue working with the university to try to identify potential candidates.
I probably shouldn't give you the forum at this point, but at this point, the chance of you winning is election for the next legislature is pretty good. What's going to happen to the department? Well, you're the only one that has that position, and now we have this. We have an inability to fill the VR position. Yeah. Are we going to be able to find anybody with the qualifications to fill your position?
Hopefully, sir, I will be able to find it before I leave. But that's my ultimate goal. I've already told my staff that. I want to be able to groom the person, mentor them. And also look at possibly setting up a contract or a contractual arrangement, because I can possibly get somebody with a lot of experience to come back to Guam on a contractual basis, and it will be a lot easier than having to start through the classified system, because that takes quite a length of time. But that's my goal.
Okay. And though you did provide it with your testimony, or at least I don't see it with the written testimony, whatever it was that you read off, the sheet that you read off for the years that you, the amounts of money that you re-allotted?
I can have a copy of that for you, sir.
Yeah, would you please?
Yes.
Okay. Because I had thought that the amounts that you were sending back was actually greater than that, except for that 1 year where you returned $2 million.
And that was at the advice of the VR administrator that I hired from off island. She advised me to re-allot it so we can decrease our matching amount and we don't get penalized. Because in the federal government, you have to expend the matching amount consistently within the 2-year period. And if you don't, then you get, they call it maintenance of effort penalty, and that will decrease the amount of our federal funds. So she recommended that we go ahead and return it since we can't be able to expend it in that short period of time, and then it will help us in the future, and that's what's happening right now. It's helping us so we can help realign and reduce that, the reallotment amount.
Have we not been providing you enough local funds to match whatever federal you need?
That really isn't the challenge, it's the expenditures. And you know how the procurement process is. Everything we procure has to go through a process. And again, that challenge can be there. And like everything else, there's that time delay in expending all those funds. You have to go through the bid process, and it's very time consuming.
I noticed in the governor's option 1 and option 2, in option 1, he increases, there's a proposal to increase by almost $90 million the matching. And then in option 2, he decreases the amount of matching for VR, vocational rehab. What part did you have in either one of those numbers, and how can you assist us?
Well, we decided to, again, leverage reducing the amount of the match so that we don't increase the maintenance of effort penalty. And by doing that, that would be the last resort. We really didn't want to go that route because we've already reached the point of our needs, so we can't decrease any more in our local funds for our Division of Support Services. So we had to go back to the match to try to balance that off and provide a decrease for the option 2.
Any of you have questions?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a quick question, because in regards to the funds that you return, it appears as if, in fact, you've either refined the process or you have not requested similar amounts. So back in 2010, it was approximately $710,000 that was returned, and then it dropped in 11 to 134,000. In 2012, you did not return or reallot any federal funds. And then 2013, it jumped up to $2 million. And then the subsequent years, 2 years, there was a leveling off. And then just last year, you had to reallot or return in federal funds approximately $143,000. So following on with the chairman, with the speaker's line of question, how could you have utilized all these federal funds? Is it the local matching, which is a restriction, the processing, the procurement?
It's a culmination. Again, a lot of it is the staffing. Like we haven't hired an administrator. That's a pretty large chunk of money right there for an administrator. There are other things that we have to negotiate in our contractual arrangements. We are looking at spending a lot of the funds, especially for a case management system, because we don't have an online case management system.
No, but Mr. Savino, I mean, if you're like 4 months out from the end of the fiscal year, you realize that you haven't been able to recruit particular personnel, and you're anticipating over $100,000 of possibly being reallotted and returned to the federal government. I mean, isn't there like a red flag raised and say, okay, how can we reallocate these federal funds within the department, still meet the requirements of the grant, and use it for other purposes within the Department of Integrated Services for Individuals with Disabilities. I mean, that really is more or less the question I have.
Question you have? Okay.
Because I have worked with federal funds
Yeah.
with the Department of Commerce, and there were many instances where, in fact, we were coming to the end of the fiscal year, or actually just 2 instances. I was there for a short period of time. But we were coming to the end of the fiscal year, and one of my instructions were, can we reallocate this within the department so that, in fact, we exhaust the use of those funds? And we were successful in doing that. So that would be my question to
Yes,
you.
I mean, we've done that. We've done a mod. We've often done a mod to reprogram the funds to different areas that we can expend the funds. Like I was saying earlier, we're trying to get a case management system and allocate funds for that. We've taken other steps to try to reduce the reallotment return, because that money, and the governor always told us, we really need to use that money. But again, the reality is the reallotment process works this way. If you don't spend it within the first year, you still have to reallot it back to the agency so they can, again, the reallotment process is assigned to all the different states that may need it. Next year, if we need more funds, I can request for a reallotment and they'll provide it for our agency. See, we receive a formula grant. Unfortunately, the formula grant comes in and it's based on population and the territory. So it's a formula grant that comes out. We don't know what it is. It just comes out, and sometimes we get an increase this year, next year we don't.
No, I understand.
So a lot of it is, again, dependent on the match. If we get the match, then they'll give us that amount for the federal grant.
And that's what I'm referring to, Mr. Savino and Mr. Speaker, is
I understand.
I think that in this particular situation, reducing that amount to anywhere from $10,000 to $20,000 of reallotment and return to the federal government because you weren't able to expend that amount,
Absolutely.
that's understandable.
Absolutely.
But in this case, if it's federal funds that we can utilize and expend it to support your mission, so every concerted effort has to be made, whether it's setting aside funding so that you can improve your computer system. Now, if you're not able
Absolutely.
to procure that particular item, then it's all about reallocation, reallotment internally within the agency so that you can exhaust those federal funds. And I cringe every time we think about returning federal money that otherwise we could have utilized for the benefit of the people that your agency services, you know, in terms of programs as well as other services. So that's a concern that I have. Yeah. Granted, you've reduced the amount. I don't know what the formula is, but you've reduced the amount to $143,000 in 2017. But in the end of the day, it's about figuring out an equation where, in fact, we can either reallocate, reuse, or retain it for subsequent fiscal years. So I think that that's just one area that certainly is a concern.
Absolutely.
When we get
And
grant
we'll
funds. So I'll just conclude it at that, Mr. Speaker. Yeah. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Hi, Mr. Servino. Afade. Can you just give me an idea, how many people have you determined eligible for services in like the last few years?
I have that data.
Pardon?
I said I have that data.
Yes. And
for 2017, are you talking about the Division of Voc Rehab or Division of Support Services? I guess the Division of Voc Rehab, because
yes,
that's an eligibility
at Voc
determination issue. For Voc Rehab, we had looked at, in 2017, we served 571 individuals, and out of that, 209 individuals were determined eligible for services. So for that particular year, pulling out my CCR, and for 2016, we had determined there were a total of 315 individuals that were, I'm sorry, looking at the DSS. Here's DVR. 508 individuals that received services from DVR, and 189 individuals were determined eligible for services.
okay. All right. I'm just curious how those numbers were tracking for you.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and Mr. Servino, for your work at DISID. I want to talk a little bit about the existing VOC rehab case tracking system. It's my understanding that it's outdated and it's very unreliable. So I wanted to get a little bit more information about that and the fact that you don't have like an online case management system. And so my question to you is, have you been able to work with the Office of Technology and kind of identifying maybe some additional resources that you might be able to use to create a solution in this area?
Yes. We've actually worked with the Office of Technology in assisting us to develop an RFP for the scoping requirements that we're going to be needing. Actually, currently we're working with the American Jobs Center. They received a grant for their online system. And as part of the core partners for the American Jobs Center and the WIOA, the Workforce Innovation Opportunity Act, they've allowed us to use their case management system. So we're currently working with the American Jobs Center, Department of Labor, to develop a module just for VOC rehab, because they already received the grant. So we're just gonna ride on that right now and see how that works.
Great.
In the interim, till we can get a more comprehensive system, case management system.
I see. So the RFP that you're describing, is that billed under the funds that would secure
rehab?
that? Yeah, that's billed under your budget or DOL's?
It'll be under our budget because, again, the software that most states use, the vocational rehab program, is designed specifically for the reporting requirements for their agencies. At one time, there were two competitive entities called AWARE and Libra that were competing for these contracts throughout the nation. And most of the states use either AWARE or Libra. And then Libra ended up merging with them. And we were really excited about that opportunity because then it would give us an opportunity for a sole source. But unfortunately, things didn't work out and Libra opted to get out of that arrangement. So now we have to go through an RFP arrangement if we're going to pursue a new grant, funding for that particular case management system.
I understand. Well, I'm really looking forward to that being successful and for us to kind of move into the 21st century here using efforts of technology to really help our individuals with disabilities. And I'm
Absolutely.
Encouraged that with you at the helm that you're going to make this happen for us. And I just want to reiterate, it's part of this budget that you're presenting today. Yes?
Yes, it is.
Yes,
Thank
you,
you.
Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much,
Thank you.
Mr. Servino.
Thank you.
Hafa Speaker Cruz and Senators of the Guam Legislature. The Commission on Decolonization's mission is to carry out the mandates of Public Law 23-147, which includes educating the public about the decolonization process and the three political status options available to Guam: free association, independence, and statehood. There are two programs under the Commission: the Public Information Program and the Commission Operations. Both programs are funded through the General Fund and are necessary to ensure the Commission achieve its mission. For fiscal year 2019, the Commission is requesting a budget of $386,063. Public Information Program. The Commission's fiscal year 2019 funding request for the Public Information Program relates to the Commission's core mission of educating the public, which includes a request for funding to specifically used by the overall Commission for outreach efforts. For the total request for that specific program is $27,662, with $26,662 going to contractual and $1,000 going to supplies and materials. Additionally, within the Commission are 3 task forces, which serve as advocates for the 3 political status options. To ensure the public is educated on free association, independence, and statehood, the Commission's fiscal year 2019 budget request includes funding for each of the 3 task forces to be used for education and marketing. Each task force, based on our fiscal year 2019 request, would receive $60,000, and I'll go ahead and go on with the breakdown of that. $40,000 for contractual, $5,000 for supplies and materials, $10,000 for equipment, and $5,000 for miscellaneous. In total, all 3 task forces, we request $180,000. Commission operations. The Commission's fiscal year 2019 funding request for operations includes funding for the Director's Office, which includes personnel, telephone and internet services, and travel. The funding request for travel is for 2 representatives from the Commission to petition on behalf of Guam at the United Nations Special Political and Decolonization, or 4th Committee. The travel request is $13,685, and we also have other requests including supplies and materials at $800, miscellaneous costs for $700, and utilities for $508. Personnel remains the same as last fiscal year, with the exception of a slight increase due to the retirement rate. There are currently 2 existing employees as part of the Commission operations, the Executive Director and the Staff Assistant. Both employees provide administrative support and conduct the daily operations of the Commission. The Commission has not requested any additional funding for other positions as part of its budget request. The Commission is aware of its assigned priority number of 307 relative to government reorganization. Prior to the passing of Public Law 34-87, Bill 247 was introduced, also establishing priority numbers relative to government reorganization. The resolution on Bill 247, adopted by the Commission during its regular meeting held in March, is attached to the testimony. Once again, our Commission is dedicated to educating the public about the decolonization process and the political status options available. Our fiscal year 2019 budget request reflects that mission.
Thank you very much. Madam Vice Speaker, do you have any questions?
I just noticed right now, so maybe correct me if I'm wrong, but on the budget digest, it shows $30,000 under equipment. It doesn't show on the back of that page on the summary where you break it down. So equipment doesn't show an additional 30,000. Or yes, it does. Okay, so but this is, the equipment is the same as FY 2018. Is that correct or not?
Yes.
Because on the digest, it looks like it's a big jump from 9,000 to 30,000.
Yes, for this fiscal year, we're requesting $30,000 specifically for the task forces.
And what was it last year?
For last year,
9,000?
I believe it was close to that, yes.
Okay.
I don't have that.
Okay, so the back I think is not correct, but the front is. All right, then, and that's for them to buy computers, printers, and speakers?
Computer, printer, speakers, sometimes they request for presenter screens or PowerPoint presenters, things along those lines that will be used as their education outreach.
This is in addition to the money that they're getting allocated to purchase almost whatever they want.
The equipment is part of the education funding. So the total is $60,000 per task force. Equipment would be $10,000 per task force, so a total of $30,000 for all 3.
30 for equipment only.
Yes, for equipment only.
So 10 each, and then 40,000 for each task force.
50,000 remaining for each task force. So 10,000 goes to equipment, and 50,000 is broken up to contractual, supplies and materials, and miscellaneous.
For the task forces?
Yes, for the task forces.
Okay. So why do you say 50,000?
I'm sorry, I said, well, 50,000 not including the 10,000 for equipment, but the equipment falls under the 60,000 for each task force's public information campaign.
Okay. Are you looking at this sheet, this summary at the back of the budget digest?
It is based off the summary, yes.
Okay, so if you look at the summary, could you just maybe walk me through that then? Because it says 40,000 for each task force, and then I see the 10,000 for each task force.
You're only looking at Schedule B, which is contractual, so
I
you're not
see.
counting the other 20,000 that goes
So
to
you give
miscellaneous.
them 40 plus, you divide up all the miscellaneous amounts?
Yes, 20,000
And the
for other
equipment
things.
amounts and the supplies and materials?
Yes, so 60,000 total to each task force, broken up to contractual, miscellaneous, supplies and materials, and equipment.
Oh, so the 40,000 is for them to use for contractual?
Yeah, so that would be for purchase orders for printing. Typically, that's the highest expense. Also for hardware is another purchase order that they've done, and that's for building signs, for example, campaign signs for the task forces with the intent. But primarily for printing right now, printing banners, posters, and handouts for our educational outreaches.
All right.
Ms. Blas, thank you very much for your testimony this afternoon. I noticed that in your attachment, you were the commission's successful with the support of the governor to be able to acquire $300,000 in grant funds. What are you looking at in terms of expending those resources?
So the $300,000 grant from the Department of Interior, $120,000 has been already allocated to the self-determination study. That's currently being in the works of going through. It's actually a memorandum of agreement with the University of Guam and the Commission. The other funds, the remainder, about the 180, the Commission is still looking at how to spend it. Some of the options that came up were a decolonization conference, a short video education series, possibly dividing it to the task forces. The Commission has not decided how to spend the remaining, but those are some of the options that have come up in previous meetings.
So you're not restricted in how you expend those resources?
It has to be for education campaign only.
Okay.
So anything will be related to the education and our mission.
Okay, I noticed that you also highlighted in your testimony in regards to Public Law 34-87 and the placement of the Commission on Decolonization in the category of 300. Mm-hmm. And acknowledging that, in fact, the Commission on Decolonization is directly under the governor's office. Is that
mm-hmm.
correct?
Yes.
And really, if you take a look at the consolidation and the additional support that could conceivably be provided mm-hmm. under the governor's office to the Commission on Decolonization, that's one of the specific reasons as to why it was placed in that particular category, because they're just having that flexibility and providing additional resources and other mechanisms, whether it's through other agencies or through the governor's office, is certainly explicitly stated there in terms of the category and where the commission presently is.
Understood. Yeah.
And looking at your ongoing efforts of the commission, mm-hmm. Granted, there would be someone different sitting in January of next year mm-hmm. in that position, but what has the commission planned out in terms of activities for the duration of going into fiscal year 19?
Sure. Well, actually, one of the discussions was the possibility of holding a decolonization conference that actually came up last time. Yes, we actually started digitizing all the information. I know Vice Speaker asked previously about old documents that we had from as far back as the Commission on Self-Determination. So those were found, and we're actually working on digitizing that and archiving everything. We are also getting all United Nations documents, and we'll make sure that we'll have a transition plan in place for whoever takes in office.
Okay, I appreciate that, because certainly we have to be forward-looking in terms mm-hmm. of exactly what may transpire with the ongoing litigation, but in the same token, moving forward with the mission of the Commission on Decolonization, because it's very critical that we either press forward aggressively with this program, and you highlighted one specific component, and that's the education yes. and information campaign. That really has to be a massive effort in terms of ensuring that everyone is informed of what options are available and what the implications and the benefits and so-called disadvantages may be as a result of that. So I appreciate the efforts and the activities of the Commission, and I certainly continue to look forward to all of your work for the balance of this
I appreciate that.
Thank
and going back to the $300,000 grant, another option was, I'm sure you've seen in the media previously that we are talking to DOE about the possibility of adding decolonization information. So we're looking at possibly hiring a curriculum writer. That's one of the discussions as well, and a social media marketing campaign. So those have all come up in previous meetings that you'll find in the minutes on our website, which we've worked to update throughout the fiscal year.
Thank you, Ms. Blas. And also I want to recognize that yes, the chairperson of the Commission on Decolonization was able to access or acquire that $300,000 in grants. So kudos to the governor and to the commission. Thank you.
And we actually have pursued another $300,000 grant in the last month or so, specifically for a Manhoban movement for decolonization. So we are looking at other funds as well to help supplement local funds.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Amanda. Under contractual services, it looks like each task force has a budget for website maintenance as well as a budget for graphic design. Is that correct?
That counts as contractual, yes.
And do each of the task forces have a website?
In this current fiscal year, Free Association Independents do have a website going up, and that was used with current fiscal year funding. Statehood has chosen currently to use their existing website, but I believe we're going to work with them as well to have an updated website.
Okay. Yeah, I actually just went online prior to the hearing, and I wasn't able to pull up a Statehood or a Free Association website. Free Association, I think, had a Facebook page,
yes.
but Independence was the only task force that I could find a website for.
Yes, both of those purchase orders have gone through for Independence and Free Association, and like I said, Statehood does have one. Their website is statehoodforguam.com, and we are working with them to updating the website, but they currently use their existing one.
So it's allotted that each task force has $1,000 to $1,500 a month for a website?
Typically, yes. That's the average cost from our experience.
That's the average cost to maintain a website?
That's the cost that we've had, yes. But that you're referring to the overall contractual. That it's not necessary that they spend all of it on website. And like I said, because they already have the PO for Free Association and Independence in terms of the building the website, the cost would probably be less.
Thank you. I know that Senator Uggan had mentioned other activities that the Decolonization Commission is engaged in. Do you have a schedule for the plebiscite?
We do not. We are currently still with the Davis case. I'm sure everybody knows it is being appealed, but we do not have a set date for the plebiscite in light of that.
So all of the efforts purely are educational?
Yes.
For each of the task forces,
yes.
In anticipation of the plebiscite?
Yes, and education is very important. I'm sure, we've seen an increase in education and interest, but we can still definitely move forward. And so I think it's definitely significantly important that the Commission receives public information funding.
Yeah, I think it's also really important to get the websites up, but I was also able to participate in an event that the Commission held in conjunction with other stakeholders, with youth. And I thought that was very well attended.
Sanguiza Health Conference.
Yes, exactly. And that was at the Guam Museum. Do you have another conference like that scheduled?
Well, it was proposed in the last meeting, as I mentioned. And I also was saying that we did request for another grant, $300,000. We call it Manhoban Movement, and that's one of the objectives would be a youth conference under that grant.
And that's a federal grant
that is,
out of which department?
Public Health. The Public Health and Human Services, I'm sorry.
Okay. Masi.
Yeah. Did you apply for the ANA grant?
Yes, that's the one I was just referring to.
Oh.
Yes.
So that's the same one?
Yes, same one, $300,000 total.
All right. Does the commission, earlier Gita said that they had paid for some travel to the United Nations for the governor, but does the commission pay travel for that?
The commission did pay for the governor, and Dr. Natividad was the voted commission member for last year. In previous years, it has been the two senators on the commission, but last year it was paid for by the governor and for Dr. Natividad.
All right, and then tell me about I've been asking since your predecessor, even I think before I was a senator, about the status of those documents that were from the Commission on Self-Determination, because I thought it was almost impossible to move forward without having a very, very clear record of where we actually were, and especially if there are transcripts from the meetings that happened in DC with that commission. I think those should be made available to all the public.
So definitely would love to speak about that. Thank you to Dr. Bivakwa for helping us in finding those documents. We did find them. We are working to scan them. We have not completely made it accessible to the public because my predecessor had also included some personnel documents in the way that they organized. So we are going to scan all the information that you requested. The commission didn't want to, the commission office didn't want to say stagnant as we were looking for those documents. So we also went to the library and MARC as well and pulled all the documents and scanned those as well. So
Where did you find those documents?
they were in a file cabinet
At Adelaide?
in storage. Yes.
In storage? All right. Okay, I have no other questions.
I have no further questions.
Thank
Thank you very
you.
much, Ms. Bloss. This budget hearing is now recessed until Thursday, May the 10th, 2018 at 9:30 a.m. when we meet with the Department of Agriculture. Thank you.
Thank you.